Our first speaker, Irina Reiku, directs the Internet Ethics Program at Santa Clara University's Markkula Center for Applied Ethics. She's a certified information privacy professional, and her work addresses a wide variety of issues, from online privacy to social media's impact on society, from the digital divide to the ethics of encryption, and from the ethics of AI to the right to be forgotten. She has authored and co-authored a variety of resources published by the Markkula Center, and her writing has appeared in numerous publications, including The Atlantic, USA Today, and the San Francisco Chronicle. Welcome, Irina.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here. Look forward to our conversation. And I do want to start by saying that the opinions I'm about to express are my own, not necessarily those of the center where I work. Like good AI chatbots, we, the presenters, were also prompted, or though in our case, the prompt was not a command, but an invitation, to talk about ChatGPT and other chatbots' impact on education and on work. But the title is broader than that because it says life and work after ChatGPT. So I'm going to come back to that. I think it's fair to say that I'm going to focus on the ethical challenges. I think my co-panelists are going to talk about the opportunities more. I think the marketing around these chatbots usually focuses on the opportunities. So I feel my role is a little bit to balance that out. So here are the issues that I see, for example, or to start with, in terms of the impact on education. In terms of changes that students can expect in the short term and in the long term, whether as undergrad students or for graduate courses. I think we already heard that it might impact just how students interact with the educational institutions themselves. For example, can chatbots provide information regarding admissions? Can they help students navigate application forms? Those are probably things that are going to happen. We are definitely seeing a push now to integrate chatbots into every place where they might be helpful, and probably some places where they won't be. I can imagine chatbots being useful to students who are preparing for maybe admission interviews. I am more concerned about the possibility of chatbots actually conducting admission interviews. And I can imagine such a future if administrative roles are cut back. And of course, I would say there's also the concern, which we're probably facing already, about chatbots writing admissions essays, just like we are concerned about the submission of various projects in classes right now and plagiarism happening. I think part of this is because students, like everybody else, are struggling to figure out what the boundaries are. And I definitely know that instructors are struggling to figure out what the boundaries are and whether to outright ban the use of some of these tools in the classroom, and how to enforce that is, a very much an open question. Whether to use things like, watermarking software to try to identify when what they're getting from a student might be actually written by a chatbot, whether to allow or even mandate the use of chatbots in some ways in the classrooms. I've seen all of these happening already. So students may expect any of those options. Then there's the impact on conducting research. The accuracy of research is probably impacted right now, especially if students are trying to use chatbots to do such research, because we know that they often produce what's been controversially called hallucinations. Some people say that only humans can hallucinate, but basically they can provide inaccurate information. And sometimes misleadingly enough that they actually provide fake citations to work that don't exist. So already the impact on the accuracy of research is being felt. And that will become aggravated as the information streams become polluted with misinformation and with those kinds of fake citations that researcher Kate Crawford has called hallucitations. There's also the question of whether people might over-rely on chatbots for research and so not do as thorough a job. And there's the more minor point, perhaps, of Sometimes if you do research on your own, there's the sense of serendipity where you stumble onto something that you had not expected and that impacts your research. And I wonder whether that's possible if chatbots are the ones sort of doing the primary lift in the research for you as a student. There's the impact on projects. Bots might be very helpful in identifying research topics, for example. They might be very helpful in a kind of pre-writing preparation of assignments to kind of help brainstorm. Definitely being used in the drafting of papers. And then at some point, they can cross the line into plagiarism. If you are, as a student, submitting something that was written, drafted by a chatbot, and you are presenting it as your own writing, your instructors are going to be deeply unhappy and they are very likely to figure it out. I used to teach writing and I remember how focused we were on plagiarism. And I know that my colleagues teaching now are really struggling with this issue of how to identify it and how to respond. And last but not least, I think such tools, maybe not chatbots, but other AI tools are going to have an impact on grading. And in fact, they have had an impact on grading for years now. Standardized tests have been graded by algorithms in many, many states. So when we talk about how students are using AI, we really need to also talk about how the educational system has been using AI. In grading student essays, it does a terrible job, but it's being used because of the claims of efficiency. So moving on to the impact on the workplace, might students expect after they graduate and enter the workplace? We already talked about that a little bit in terms of jobs may be disappearing or changing or some activities being done more efficiently by chatbots. I think it's also worth thinking about the impact on a search for good positions that chatbots might actually help students find positions, be helpful in a way that as a tool that we didn't have before. I was thinking also about impact on hiring. And here I'm thinking sort of more using my imagination, again, based on the fact that we seem to be integrating chatbots into everything. Could there be chatbot job interviews? We know that there's already been cases of automated firings. Both the hiring and firing of employees might be impacted by AI tools. And then in terms of the impact on the work itself, if a job involves image generation or text generation or code generation, that job is going to be impacted. If the job involves in any way providing information to others, so call centers are already being impacted. And then you can think about various contexts in which we're seeing chatbot tools and other AI tools being deployed already, like the context of therapy. So if you're a therapist, your job might be impacted. If you're a journalist, your job might be impacted. If you're a lawyer, although I would definitely push back on the notion that these tools have achieved human level performance in some of these areas, they can be very helpful to lawyers in some of those tasks, but they will definitely have to be treated and used very carefully. If you're an instructor, we already said your job will be impacted and is being impacted right now by these tools. If you're a politician, if you're an activist, in a lot of our activities, if you're writing your vows or you're writing a love letter, you're going to be impacted. It goes beyond education and beyond work. There are a lot of ethical issues related to the possibility of technological unemployment. Are these tools going to take over some jobs? There's also the high likelihood that there will be new jobs that will arise. Already the chatbots are shaped by human feedback, human input, and so we will need people to provide that kind of input. There are already workers who are doing the work of data labeling and content moderation, and that kind of work will only increase. And I want to point out that we're going to need a lot of AI-related educators, people who really can explain these tools and help integrate them effectively into society, a group of people that I don't think we have enough of right now. There are ethical questions related to biases affecting generative AI and all of AI. The fact that all of these tools draw on past data, they draw on data that's on the internet, which means it's not a complete picture of the world. It's a subset of data. It can be incomplete. It can be non-representative data. and yet we treat them as if they draw accurate conclusions about the entire world. We sometimes have shifting data categories. So if you try to track something over time, the fact that we used to label one group of people a certain way, and we now label them, we have a different name used for that group, will impact how well we can use such tools. And it's really important to keep in mind that the data is always looking backwards. And so it's really hard for these tools to keep up with societal changes. A few years ago, a writer wrote an article and said AI will soon be able to make a better decision than we could about who we should marry. And that's an interesting claim, but let's say until very recently, we did not have gay marriage. So data about gay marriage is probably not great numbers in some of these data sets. And so a model, if we would ask an AI who we should marry, they might never suggest gay marriage because they just don't have the data to back that up. So it's really important to keep that in mind when it comes to biases. Society changes and the data takes a while to reflect that. And so whenever we use these kind of tools, we really have to make sure that the data is as contextualized and as recent and as local as possible. There are also issues related to intellectual property. The fact that some of these tools are trained by consuming people's work, like the work of artists when it comes to image generation, writers when it comes to the generation of text, that the tools can imitate people's styles. And so there are a lot of questions about whether this will constitute fair use or whether they will be actually deemed to be copyright violations. And there are lawsuits in play already around some of these questions. There's the potential to exacerbate inequality. And in that, I would just say compare the incomes of AI company executives or employees or shareholders with the incomes and working conditions of folks like contract workers who do the data labeling and the content moderation for these kind of tools. That's one example of the inequality that we're looking at in this context. And then since life is more than education and work, throw out a few more issues that we need to confront when we're talking about these tools. There's the question of privacy, about the fact that personal data is ingested and insufficiently transformed sometimes by these kind of tools. And we've seen regulators acting against ChatGPT in Italy just a couple of days ago. There's the question of a loss of dignity if we have something like machine firings of employees. There's the question of a risk of the loss of due process and the difficulty to contest or appeal decisions made by AI. There's the danger of the appearance of objectivity in some of these tools, which can be biased, but because people see data processed through math, they think it somehow cleans out those human biases when it does not. And then there's the environmental impact. The training and the use of all of these AI models has a lot of impact in terms of energy use and environmental impact in general. So I will finish by one question that I'm hoping that my co-panelists will help me answer maybe by the end of our conversation. I think if we think about beyond these particular issues that I already mentioned, if we think about the impact on the information ecosystem and the common good, the conditions that are required for our whole community to thrive, this is a question and a bit of a provocation. If companies build and deploy chatbots, and there are many, not just ChatGPT, that introduce misinformation potentially at scale into our information streams, sometimes with misleading marks of truthfulness, like citations to inexisting sources. And then that misinformation, together with other data, is sucked back into the training of the models themselves. Should we think of such companies as the equivalent of industrial polluters of other kinds of shared resources? And should we look to the successes and insufficiencies of environmental regulation for lessons to learn about this new era that we're entering? Thank you, and I look forward to my co-panelist comments.
Thank you, Irina. Now, our second speaker is Alka Roy, a Bay Area innovator, technologist, author, keynote speaker, and independent advisor. She is on the 100 Brilliant Women in AI and Ethics list and a recipient of the Rising Star National Women of Color in Technology Outstanding Contribution Award. Alka is a product and technology leader who has built and launched over 100 wireless, cloud, and AI products, working with startups and Fortune 500 companies. Welcome, Alka, to our presentation.
Thank you, Jeffrey, and thank you, Irina, and all the people who have organized today's gathering and discussion. I want to change the conversation a little bit. We always start the gatherings that we have asking people, even if they're in meetings, in Zoom or in person, how they're feeling. The domain being ours to feel. So if people want to put in the chat, how are you feeling? Like you could say like this, the sun is shining. To a lot of rain for a lot of days for us. So the sun is shining outside and you can just see, you could be feeling sun is shining, but I'm kind of sad. I'm really happy, whatever it is, go ahead and drop in how you're feeling, stressed, happy. And I will share while you're doing that, a poem with you. This poem, I ask ChatGPT to help me write a poem about sunshine. Sure, here's a poem about sunshine. Response system. Oh, sunshine, how you make my heart sing. Your golden rays, like a warm embrace, bring a sense of joy and peace to all who feel your gentle touch so real. Not working for me. I ask, can you write me a haiku about sunshine? Sure, here's a haiku about sunshine. Very sure, no questions. There's a response. Golden rays of light, warm and bright, embrace the earth, nature comes alive. That's a little, so I ask for a modern poem. And I say, can you write me a modern and sad poem about sunshine? And I get this haiku. Then I ask for a modern poem that's a little sad. I'm not feeling that chipper just because of sunshine. So I get a sad poem, but I don't think ChatGPT knows or the system knows what a modern poem is or what I mean by it. It doesn't ask me what a modern poem is or what do I mean by a modern poem. It just gives me a sad poem. The sun shines bright, but I feel numb. Its rays are warm, but I am glum. Got the sad part right. So I say, okay, let me help it a little bit and give it a prompt saying, can you write me a non-rhyming poem? So then I get this poem, a very rhyming poem. So I say, try again. So in the second try, I get this. Sunshine, oh sunshine, how you warm my skin. Your gentle touch is like a kiss from within. Seems like a rhyming poem, but it doesn't say, oh, sorry, this is the best I can do. It just says, sure, of course, I'll give it to you with a sense of confidence. But what we've done in a few try is figured out what the limits of this particular system is, what it knows and doesn't know. Now, if I didn't know what a modern poem was, or I didn't know what non-rhyming poem was, or I wasn't paying attention, then I wouldn't know the difference. But here is its limitation. We've kind of hit that. So then I say, okay, what if someone sent this poem to me and I wanted to detect whether it was created by AI or a person? So I asked ChatGPT, hey, how can I detect if a content is created by AI? And this is the response I get. Repetitive language, lack of personality or voice. Of course, you can have a personality of voice if it's programmed in. Errors or inconsistencies. We just noticed some. Unnatural language flow and identical content. So no matter how many times you ask it and how many different ways, the content still kind of is a derivative of the old content because it's accessing the same kind of content. Now, what tools can you use to detect if the content was generated by AI? And it gives me GPT-3 detector, human evaluation, plagiarism detection tools, machine learning algorithms. There are tools, I don't know if you've used, called Writer, and other tools that actually AI programmers use to see how good their AI is. And you can actually use to see if someone who's responding to you is a real person or is an image generated by AI and is using text generated by AI. And then, I go on saying, hey, ChatGPT, is it okay that you were created without using public consent? And it gives me a very, very PR kind of answer. And there's a reason I'm sharing this with you, because it's not what people say about this black box, AI being black box, because what it gives me response the system gives me, I can start to see who the people behind the system are. So I can start seeing the game behind the game. And this is, I've been working in conversational AI and language models for a long time. And when we test it, when we evaluate other people's models, we try to see what the designer was thinking. So they're giving us a PR response. Probably people have asked this question in many different ways. And it has a response kind of canned. And a lot of the stuff that you're seeing generated by ChatGPT has had a lot of human intervention in it. So it's not completely a pure generative model, as people call it. It's really a very synthesized model. It's just predicting and using a response to generate it. So it's been really, has had a lot of practice, basically. And then I ask it, should I trust the responses generated by GPT? And I go on and on about, do you exist, who you are, existential questions, and that's for fun. Now, here's the thing. The whole time I'm playing with it, I am actually engaging with it, and I'm part of the experiment. So I am teaching it and I'm training it. And I asked the organizers of this event, will they take this recording and put it up in a public place? They said yes, YouTube. And guess what? That means that that data can then be scraped. What I say, what I share, the shortcomings I show can be scraped and fixed or changed. So again, no matter whether you criticize or you find faults or whatever you do, as long as you put it in public domain, a system can learn from it, scrape the data from it and learn from it. The reason I share all this with you is because I think the thing that we are struggling with in this conversation about AI, or start to saying, what's ChatGPT going to do for us, or how is it going to impact our lives, is that as long as we engage and as long as we organize in a digital platform in a particular way, we're participating in this giant experiment. And we have a part to play, what we use, how we play, when we don't play. Being aware of it can really make it interesting and give us those mental models and tools to figure out and see the game and kind of see things for what they are. And the reason it is important is because the provocation that got me to take a hiatus from building all my AI, 5G, and all of those tools was this provocation that I start almost every single discussion with, which was in the rooms that I was sitting in. I kept asking the question, the technology that I'm building today, the thing that I'm working on, the tool, the algorithm, 5G integrated with AI or Edge or Google Home or whatever the protocol for it, or a handshake, whatever I'm building in, how is that going to change us, our relationship with each other, and our relationship to ourselves? And so the provocation that I start almost every discussion with is, how are we designing our world, our technology, be it AI, because AI is embedded in many, many things, right? Or anything else. And how is that design then designing us? So Irina did a terrific job highlighting different ways you can use this or misuse it, technologies. Now, what are these technologies embedded on? Where do they get the playbook? So I'll go a little deeper into like sort of pulling the layers and the screens back. But before I do, I have a question for you. Thank you for participating before. And I'm wondering, before I tell you how it's been impacting me, how has AI, ChatGPT, or what people are calling generative AI, impacted your life or work, or you think will impact? Think about how has it impacted you, or how you are worried about or excited about it impacting you. And the reason I asked this question is because I thought about this today. And I thought, has my life fundamentally changed because of AI? Or now this just slightly evolved version of it, generative AI, and then some more evolved versions coming. I've seen those and what they look like. Why are we surprised when we've seen this experiment happening right in our front of our eyes? Why do we get surprised when it gets good, when it's gotten so much investment? So the reason I realize is I don't know if it's really impacted me so much. But at the same time, A lot of people were saying, oh, talking about responsible innovation, ethics and AI, people are done with it. There's going to be an ethics AI winter or AI winter. And then this generative AI pops in and everyone's like worried about it again. And so, that doesn't happen. But these are all tips of our iceberg. There are so many other technologies that we don't know or hear about. Brain-computer interfaces. I've played games, neural games, where you can move things without using your hands or language. Or there's digital twins that are being created, sometimes of kids. Who's giving that consent? And what's that information? How will that be used later? AI is a portion of it, enables the large data formation, but the technologies are numerous and very, very different. Down the road from where I live is a showcase for a flying car. I can see it. So there's the technology part is very interesting. They use 5G for communication. I understand part of it, but there's going to be a flying car. My daughter was with me and she said, Mom, why are you driving when you can, fly? So it's really, this shift is happening in many, many, many places. So it's really, really important that we step back and look at the bigger picture. The fakes, deep fakes, were here. These images, these people don't exist. They come from that site. And these were generated in 2018, 2019 timeframe. So this is not just a new technology, it just becomes easier to do and harder to grapple and grasp. So it's really important to contextualize what it is that we're looking for. So the key provocations I would leave you with in this short period of time that we sit with our leaders or people who come in and we sit with them and what we call responsible innovation. Basically, how do we change the ecosystem of innovation? Because it's more than AI, because our current mental models, language framing, like chasing the new trends, a couple of years ago was metaverse was going to take over the world. Blockchain was everything. And, instead of chasing hype and trends, how can we contextualize and see what's real? What's its limitations? Where do we need some boundaries around this? And how come instead of us running around each one and catching this, how can we rebalance the tech and business ecosystem? Not just tech and business and maybe, governmental policy ecosystem to structure it and build accountability. If we, built amazingly fast roads and amazingly fast cars, but no speed limit, no seat belt, no rules about what age could drive, anybody could get on these cars and go, if it was just for a small group of people and experiment, maybe it will work. But if the entire population was just thrown into it, would we be okay with it? Then why are we okay with it in the digital space? The reason I think these provocations are important is because this is where I've noticed even people who are well-meaning, people in entering the ethical debate get caught up. And our engineers got caught up. Our professors get caught up. So it's really important that we step back and keep revisiting these three provocations and other myriads that it opens up. The last thing kind of I would mention is that ChatGPT is just a continuation. So in the sense of, because the topic is about ChatGPT, it's in the continuation of technology evolution. Well, our habit and our muscle and the practice that we need is rebalancing it and thinking about privacy, surveillance, transparency, diversity, global imbalance, environmental impacts, everything that gets exasperated, and our well-being, the environments we work in, gets exasperated by this sort of over-reliance on digital world that doesn't make any guardrails or rules around it. And we're letting it, we're allowing it to happen. And every time it happens, we're like, oh, surprise, now is the time, now is the time. So if ChatGPT allows people to now pay attention to these issues that we've been talking about for decades, great, because they have not changed. They've just accelerated, amplified. And some of that playbook actually comes from the business world, the way we've organized ourselves, what we call media, who owns media, how we create entertainment. So it's really interesting, no matter what field you work in and we work in, we can talk about something that will impact this final outcome with these decisions. I can answer through these things. We look at responsibility gap, we look at the wealth gap, and it's really, really interesting to me is that we keep pointing fingers as to whose responsibility is it to fix some of these things. And it's really interesting, but we don't really stop to say, oh, I can't really benefit from it until I figured this out. So we're okay benefiting from it. But when it comes to holding accountability, we go like, who could do that? Where are the ethicists? Where are the policy people? And we're kind of pointing fingers. That's kind of another pattern that we've seen. And this is the reason I've sort of focused on responsible innovation. We do that in our labs. And we've started thinking about this idea of future of leadership and creating a community, which hopefully you will join of the community here today, because one of the things we are noticing in the tech world, the business world, we have $500 billion have been invested in AI research. And I think it's more than that. How much of it is being carved out to include a diverse set of ideas and people and to think about the environmental impact, well-being impact? And if it isn't, why aren't we asking for that? If it isn't, why aren't we making that sort of a popular, common success metric? So I think I gave you some of those questions to ponder. And, as we move forward, I would say these are the three things we really, really ought to be sitting through. And I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts and anything that you're kind of struggling or excited about, because I'm excited about technology innovation. I'm excited about technology. I do think, though, it must come with responsibility and accountability. If we don't build it, we're missing out on a great opportunity. So looking forward to the discussions and questions, and thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Alka. Our third speaker, Shira Eisenberg, is an AI practitioner with experience in natural language processing research at Intel, MIT, and the CDC. She is currently consulting while working on independent genomics AI research projects and writing for Alpha Signal AI, a newsletter with 60,000 machine learner researcher subscribers. She also writes an AI column for Sino Global Capital, a VC firm that specializes in digital assets and blockchain. Unfortunately, due to a schedule conflict, Ms. Eisenberg will not be here able to join us live. Therefore, we now present her recorded message to our audience.
It is clear that AI will revolutionize how we approach and experience education and work. Let's take a look at how this might be. In the classroom, first, I want to address potential changes to the process of education and learning. ChatGPT and conversational AI are already transforming the education process. It's been a subject of debate whether or not this is a good thing, but students are using the app for co-writing and, more notably and significantly, personalized learning. Chat-based learning makes cheap and accessible something that was priorly expensive: personalization and customization. It is hard to tailor a textbook or a lecture to the individual student, but easy to tailor a conversation to the individual student. This opens up a world of opportunity in terms of tutoring and educating to the individual, rather than just teaching en masse. In some terms of ethics, while debatable, I'd say this is great because it democratizes education. We have to be careful, though, because language models in their present state are still prone to hallucinations or making up information to fill in gaps in knowledge. In the long term, the presence of expert language models or language models customized to a specific domain of knowledge, for instance, medical experts or physics experts, might lower the need for pursuing graduate studies. I'd posit, however, that it would augment graduate education rather than completely eliminate the need for it. That's a theme I'll be stressing. I'm a big believer that generative AI and AI in general will augment or enhance education and work rather than eliminate the need for it altogether. More processes will be automated than entire professions or domains of expertise. You still need human experts in the loop to verify information and for creativity. AI, at least in its current state, isn't going to stumble upon new theorems, or if you're talking business, it's not going to stumble upon new business models and be able to prove them sufficiently. In the workforce, I'm also of the belief that augmentation will occur far longer and faster than full automation. Of course, there are still some jobs like copywriting that have been fully automated by AI, but even if we look at the increasing proficiencies and knowledge domains of language models, we still see a need for a human in the loop for most lines of work. OpenAI recently released a paper last month called GPTs are GPTs, where the first GPT is generative pre-trained transformer, and the second GPT is general purpose technology. General purpose technologies are transformative. General purpose technologies, e.g. printing or the steam engine, are characterized by widespread proliferation, continuous improvement, and the generation of complementary innovations. Their far-reaching consequences, which unfold over decades, are difficult to anticipate, particularly in relation to labor demands. The realization of general purpose technology's full potential requires extensive co-invention, a costly and time-consuming process involving the discovery of new business procedures. Appropriately designed systems can yield considerable business value and improve firm performance, with AI tools facilitating the discovery process. The paper's findings revealed that around 80% of the US workforce could have at least 10% of their work tasks affected by the introduction of LLMs, while approximately 19% of workers may see at least 50% of their tasks impacted. They use a measure of exposure, which they define as a measure of whether access to a large language model, LLM, or LLM-powered system would reduce the time required for a human to perform a specific designated work activity or complete a task by at least 50%. They calculated this by asking laborers to identify whether tasks within a profession could be significantly quicker to complete with access to a large language model, and also asking GPT-4 for labels as well. The findings suggest that based on their task level capabilities, LLMs have the potential to significantly affect a diverse range of occupations within the US economy, demonstrating a key attribute of general purpose technologies. Among professions with the most exposure were software engineers and information workers. The findings were disproportionately that high salaried professions with high barriers to entry and high necessities for education had greatest exposure, while manual labor work had low exposure. It is likely that we'll see a lot of augmentation and automation in information work in the coming years. What might this look like? Yes, there will be fewer jobs in certain categories, but there will also be a lot of new and transformative technologies leveraging LLMs and AI in general, enabling faster, more precise, and more productive work. In the coming years, creators, developers, and innovators will face a critical decision: either continue working for an organization that may actively seek to automate their roles, or venture independently, leveraging AI to build applications and establish their own enterprises. This becomes increasingly essential as AI continues to proliferate, contributing to work that truly matters. Jobs with no exposed tasks tend to be those that do not require a college education and often fail to provide a living wage. It may be prudent for the US to begin establishing safety nets for job displacement, even while the economy is still in an augmentation phase, rather than waiting for full automation to take hold. Let's talk a bit about co-invention. With LLMs as general purpose technologies, there is a significant need for co-invention or development of businesses and technologies around LLMs. This is more reason to become entrepreneurial and go into one's own enterprise. There is so much room to be part of the process of changing how we learn and work, perhaps enough that we can make up for some of the jobs lost to automation. Teams will likely get smaller, however, with much of the workload relying on AI. We're looking at the dawn of an intensely transformative time. How we engage with that is dependent on our perspectives. As an example of co-invention, I'll discuss a few startups I've recently consulted on. One is a product discovery product, which is using AI to help budding companies go from ideas to plans by co-writing customer surveys. The product discovery process is an iterative process that starts with identifying broad challenges that you are trying to solve with your product. It involves deeply understanding customers on a level in order to develop products that perfectly suit their needs and reduce uncertainty about a problem or idea. One feature I helped develop enables you to input a company description and get a profile of the ideal customer. This helps not to automate, but to augment the tedious product discovery process. Again, I want to stress augmentation, not full automation. Another startup I'm consulting on is for the legal space. They're developing an AI legal assistant to lighten and streamline startup lawyers' workloads. It is a collaborative document editor with a chat assistant that understands startup law and is able to co-write contracts. This shaves hours off the time it would have taken to draft beforehand. We also have AI-generated contract templates created by exposing AI to data sets of startup contracts and having it consolidate contract templates from what it's seen. Again, we're augmenting a process, not completely automating it. There will still be a need for startup lawyers. Their workload will just be lighter. Thirdly, I want to talk about how generative AI is helping me in creating my own startup by serving as a co-creator and sounding board for my pre-seed pitch deck. I've been using GPT-4 for this, and it's not perfect, but it is helpful. If it were exposed to a data set of pitch decks, it would be even better. See, there's an idea for process augmentation right there. There are so many opportunities to innovate around the coming and present technological revolution. I tend to be an optimist while still acknowledging the need for policy to help with and anticipate work displacement. What and how this policy might be and how it may be implemented isn't my wheelhouse, but I can say that there's a need for it. My advice to you is to find a process that can be significantly quickened or lightened with the help of generative AI and iterate on an idea around it. It's a lot more fun and a lot more work than it sounds, but the end result is so worth it.
We give our thanks to Shira for her talk.